Check, check. Yes, yes. This is Selecta J Cut, the Burbia Podcast, Culture Clash International. I'm joined today by John Meat Sheet Digital Fanzine. Um, you want to introduce yourself, John?
Sure. I'm John Meat. Did a fanzine in the 90s. You can see it on my website, meatsheetfanzine.com. It covered hardcore punk, skateboarding, and then any type of thing I could latch onto with the Howard Stern show at the time. I was an avid fan. I'm not really following the show right now, but I got pretty close to the inner circle of that crew, and I had a lot of the weirdos and the comedians from that show, and that was a lot of fun. I did 6 issues. I got it into maximum rock and roll and got slammed a couple times because it wasn't politically correct. I made it into Thrasher. Thrasher gave it favorable reviews. Um, where else did it go? It was in several distros, which is a lot of fun. I get a check for like $10 2 years later. It was kind of cool. And of course, labels were sending you free product because back then there's actual like um, it was
Promo.
there wasn't a digital market. It was all uh, I don't think cassettes were big yet, but it was all CDs and vinyl back then. So
Cool.
I'd get CDs and vinyl, and I might have had a record player back then too. So it was a whole different world. And now I just relaunched the digital blog. It's not the same, but it's a lot of fun.
Cool, cool. Yeah, so John and I, we worked together a few years ago at a grocery store, and we were like-minded on a lot of music. We connected on a lot of things. So basically, this we're gonna have the first episode of the Burbia podcast next Thursday. This is kind of a preliminary test run for that. But like I was saying, we connected on a lot of music between punk, hip hop, reggae, anything else really. I mean, we're both kind of adventurous musically, so figure we'll have some have some discussion about different whatever topics arise. But
Yeah, there's a lot of common ground, but I have to say, J Cut will fill in the blanks of stuff that I've quite not heard of, or I've heard of it, but I never listened to it, and vice versa. So it's uh, it's good to know you, J Cut, because you're the selector. No, no, because when I was in seventh grade, I knew this guy. He's still my friend. He's on the East Coast. He would invite me over and just play demos, and he was like one of the two or three people to get me hooked on punk and thrash. And then he also was into a lot of ska. And then later he got me into the '90s British and indie rock thing. So
cool.
um, I could plug him if you want. His name's Old School Alex, and he runs Brooklyn Inc. in Brooklyn, and he's winning awards for tattooing.
Nice.
And that's the guy that I'd say he's one of three that is responsible for me going a little deeper into things.
Word.
So
Give me one
Old
moment.
School
I'm just
Alex.
gonna check the YouTube to see if it's streaming correctly, real quick.
If it is, then we could do it over.
Yeah, we are live now. So anybody that's tuning in, thanks for tuning in. And this is just a kind of off the cuff episode. We're getting ready for next Thursday's premiere.
Is that a
Make sure
cat there?
got Mr. Grimm in the house.
Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah, so I'm
Look at all
thinking
that.
I don't know about playing music on here. I mean, I figure we'll talk music, but I figure I can play little snippets, but I can't really do more than like 10 or 15 seconds of a song once we get into all that, just to keep from the video getting blocked or anything like that for copyright issues.
So wait a minute. YouTube will actually correct. They have algorithms that can notice that.
Oh yeah, yeah, they do. They like I post DJ mixes and a lot of times they're certain songs they'll allow, certain songs they won't. It all depends on the licensing and everything. So I usually
So
just
like
with my mixes, I'll just post it and then I have to edit it down and cut out all the tracks that are questionable there.
so
But
like
for
if I wanted to
this,
play 10 seconds of the new Cro-Mags, that would be good.
I feel like we can get away with that. I don't. We'll go for it and just play it by ear more or less. But yeah, if you want to play
I'm
something, that'd be cool.
I'm sure if I could talk to Harley that he would want to see his record promote it, but that's just me and him, I
Yeah.
think. But we're dealing with YouTube, so I know they were jerky back in the day. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be some copyright issues, but I figure if we're talking about the music more and we can play little snippets and as long as it's mostly conversation, I feel like it'll work out all right. Yeah, I don't think they'll have a problem with that.
I mean the bands that I've been reviewing or whoever it is, like on the blog, they're they've got a following, but they're not the they're the type that they want to have people talking about their stuff, and it's not like something that's like they're going to lose revenue by us talking about it. If anything, they would be grateful that their music matters to people, because
Yeah,
that's
no
what
doubt.
doing a podcast is about. That's what doing a zine's about. That's what promoting a show, being a promoter is. So I don't know. But we can work around the constraints, you know.
I feel you. Yeah, I mean that's the reason for doing all this. I'm just trying to get closer with the music and all, and you're definitely ahead of me on that aspect. I'm kind of antisocial,
I,
so this is a
I
way for
don't
me
know
to kind
about
of
all
break
that.
out.
I don't know about all that because uh, coincidentally, this last 2 weeks or since I launched the blog on May 25th, a lot of bands I already knew just happened, or artists, they just started releasing stuff. So it's not that I'm ahead. I was just a fan, like the Cro-Mags. That's their first record in 20 years, I think it said. That's just dumb luck. I happened to see that on late Friday night, and it came out that day, and I knew it was coming, but I wasn't paying attention. And I was like, now I have an outlet for it, or if something's coming out, you want me to feature on your site. And now there's a way to cover it, and I know if I check up on things and I can stay up on it at some point. Like there is stuff coming out. It's just I haven't been in the loop because what was I gonna do? I mean, you can only listen to so much music in a day, and I didn't have a blog, so now it's kind of like lit a fire under my ass to do this. And a lot of people are receptive. It's just I wanted I wanted to do it at the right time. Like if one of your artists that you love is going to release something, that's the time. Like right before they drop it, that's the time to grab them.
Yeah,
Because
no
they're going to
doubt.
want to
Yeah,
talk. They're going to want to talk to you.
word.
Like
I,
I
I
got
hear
my,
you.
my
I mean, and like socially, I do Facebook and all that. You're able to connect with a lot of people that 10 or 15 years ago wouldn't have even really been accessible like that. So there's definitely making the effort. Reminds me of a couple. I got a new Mark Stewart record the other day. It's this Italian group called Obsolete Capitalism Sound System. Pretty interesting stuff. They had another one with Adi Newton of the anti group Chaos Variation. It's a series 3. This is 4. They had one with Howie B. And I forget who the first one was with, but it's
is that kind
kind
of
of
like is it kind of
electronic
like a
dubby,
Doug
very
Fusion?
political. Pretty cool stuff.
Is Mark Stewart with the pop group?
Yes, and also Mark Stewart and the
Okay.
Mafia. That's who I really got introduced to him with the Mark Stewart and the Mafia back when when Public Enemy, Nation of Millions was one of my favorites. I was listening to a lot of hip hop, but I was also into the industrial and all that. And Mark Stewart and the Mafia kind of, especially with their album Veneer, as the veneer of democracy starts to fade, really like they mashed up the whole hip hop, dub reggae, punk, and industrial, and just kind of like, I mean, that album really influenced me for sure. But then I discovered the pop group, or I had heard of them before, but I got into them through that after that album, and And then the pop group are back around now. They were split up for years, and I heard that they did a reunion show originally because of Matt Groening of The Simpsons. Like he
Oh,
asked them
really?
to reunite and do a show, and so and then they got together and started doing albums again. So, but yeah, that's definitely one of my big groups that I'd like to try and bring out, or at least work with in some way like that.
Well, I'm sure that they would talk to you. It's just a matter of connecting the dots, because
Right.
I don't think there would be like copyright infringements on you singing praises or talking
Oh no.
about them.
Oh no. Of
I
course not.
copyright is for like more like people that just want to lift people's music and sample it or monetize it without their consent.
Yeah.
As a former Harvard Law graduate, I can say that. No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
but still, the labels own the rights to the music. So if you're
Yeah,
if
but a
you're
lot
recording
see some artists that I like, they're what do you call it? They put out their
independent,
own stuff on their own label.
right?
Or
Yeah.
they live with the guy they live with is the guy that runs the label, and their roommate is in that band. So depends on who they are and what their arrangement with that label is. Now if you're
Yeah.
talking about one of the huge labels, or even a subsidiary of a huge label that like an indie label owned by like a big one, I don't want to mention their names because
Yeah.
they're
I'll
responsible
mention
for
one. Warp Records, man. They will flag your shit in a heartbeat. they own, they
Warp.
they have the licensing on a lot of the on you sound and all. So that's why a lot of
uh
a lot of my videos will get taken down, or I'll have to edit them down because
I'm
of that.
talking about people that average like millions of downloads or stuff like that, like
Yeah.
million, um, like people that actually make money on music in this day and age from like a corporation who might own like they might own a newspaper, a record label, and a in the one of the like I'm talking super big, and then like people that buy those smaller guys out. So like those are the people that I would not want to. If I can attract their attention, then I'm doing something right because I've got enough viewers. But at the same time, they're kind of like the ones I hold responsible for music going bad. And
Right.
on the other hand, I don't fault them because as artists, you got to make a living too. So it's a double edged sword. The music, I don't want to be negative. The music industry is what it is. It's it's a
As
business.
as Cool Keith once said, the whole fucking industry is whack.
Well, hats off to an artist, any artist. A lot of them, there's still a handful of them. They're still making music on their terms, and
Yeah.
they've done it for a decade, two or three or four, and regardless of how many people are following them, hats off to them, man. Um, I just saw Gary Wilson at the Crescent Ballroom. That was probably the last show I saw, and he's been going since 1977. And it was my ignorance. I didn't know he was putting out that level of music this whole time. I found out about him in the 2000s, and just got kind of busy with life. And when I saw he was coming around, I jumped on the chance. And there's that type of artist. He's been going 40 years, and he's still kind of you know I would say indie. And then there's people that have been doing it like I don't know, like the Misfits that sold out Madison Square Garden. They've been going that as long, but they're playing Madison Square Garden. And then there's the super groups. So there's different levels of being around a long time. So
No doubt.
I don't discriminate as long as I'm a fan. That's what it is. That's what I do. It's a fanzine. If I cover you, I'm either you've sent me. The only time I'm not a fan of something in my content is when somebody sends me something, and if somebody takes the time to send me something, I feel like it's my obligation to at least give it a fair exposure. You
Right.
know, but I'm a fan of like almost all the content, so that's what I'm starting with. Doing like
No doubt. Yeah, I'm with
yeah,
you on that for sure. I mean, and I got to get more into the digital field as far as covering music because I'm strictly vinyl at this point, and it's like there's a lot of things that come out that I might miss out on that I don't. People put me onto things here and there, but usually if it's not out on vinyl, I'm like oblivious to it. So
Well, I won't mention the name, but there's certain services where you just pull them up and the music's there, and I can put it on and I can start writing about it, and that's how I'm able to throw up quick reviews. There's shit ton of typos in them. Um, Maybe I repeat myself. I don't really know how to describe some of the stuff, but um, it's back in the day. I mean, somebody sends you their 7 inch or their cassette demo. It was like 6 months before I could get that to print.
hmm,
Unless they send me their demo like a week before it's going to print.
right,
So now everything's like instant gratification. I want
no
it
doubt,
now. I wanted it last week. Uh, you know, times have changed.
for sure. That's why we're live streaming, talking about talking about music. But it's a digital age. But I feel like the independent music is definitely going to be. I feel like the mainstream is kind of doesn't really have anywhere to go from here. Like people are burnt out on pop music. Who's
Well,
listening?
what you call pop music, like in the mainstream, that was done already. That's done because the people, almost all my acquaintances and friends that are on the same musical page, they would agree with you and me, and they're not our audience. And maybe a couple, like I know a couple people, they like some of those artists, but they like good music, or they like more under the radar stuff. They'll like one major artist, or two major artists that are like super super big, like the
Yeah.
guilty pleasure. But they're at the same time, they're some of these people I know, they're supporting people who fill a room of under 50 people, or people who put out a demo and there's 100 copies. That's
Hmm.
you know I don't have any interest in covering like Lady Gaga unless she does some crazy mashup experimental noise record. But what are the
I
chances
feel
of
like
that?
Saint Vincent got what Lady Gaga should have. Like if Lady Gaga was really as creative as some of the people hyped her up to be, I felt like Saint Vincent kind of captured that creativity.
Right. I agree, but from what I only listened to a little St. Vincent, but about like something like Lady Gaga, she let's face it, she doesn't have a lot of artistic control. I think there's a contract,
Mm,
maybe more than one contract. I
mm.
won't get into that, but St. Vincent, I don't know what label she's on, but she's more of an artist.
Yeah, for
Gaga's
sure.
she's a Gaga's an entertainer. It's kind of like the difference between MC Hammer and uh, MC Hammer and like Chuck
Rakim.
D or Rakim. Rakim is hip hop, and like MC Hammer, he's rap, entertainer, dancer. you know. And I'm not dissing Hammer because I'm just saying there's people that they fill a certain need, and it is what it is.
No doubt.
There's a difference, and so um, I have an old ad I can hold up. Um, this is a color ad. I think it ran black and white, and it made shirts. But that's Edward Rooney.
Oh yeah, nice.
So
Yeah, send me that. I'll have it up on the screen for next week.
so basically the when I made stuff like that for the printed zine, we would just lift. I would lift graphics and put my own stuff I was a fan of, and put my own text over it because I had all those platforms where you could do that, and now you have to pay a lot of money for them. So, and since the print medium's struggling, why bother? I mean, I'll like I am going to do a printed zine, but
That's
back
cool.
then it was just you know. And then shortly after, you had stuff like that serial killer brand. They just started taking like stills from movies and slapping their logo on it,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Well, we were doing that. We were doing that back in the day in our zines and stuff. So, what were you gonna say?
Oh, nothing. I was just agreeing. Oh
All
man.
right.
Yeah,
Well,
I think we got a pretty good test run here. I think we can get more prepared for next week and
can
do
you
a
cut it
full
down?
episode.
Can you cut down like the pauses and stuff at the end just now?
Well, I mean it's live, but
Oh, oh, what do you know about that? Oh, I don't know. I'm just concerned about continuity because I was watching this that podcast earlier today, and they really moved it right along. But of course,
yeah.
I think there's an actual what do you call it? Uh, there's an outline that they're sticking to.
Mm,
Like he had several guests, like friends, and then he had the main guest.
yeah.
But before they did that, they talked about new releases and they said hello to whoever was there.
Right.
Um, I don't know if anybody's going to actually tune in Thursday. I mean, I just don't know. This is brand new for me.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that show I played at the Rogue Bar. Like 20 people showed up. I didn't know. I didn't think it was going to be. I thought there was going to be four or five. Sometimes there's, and then the other gigs there was like one, one plus everybody that was with the band.
I've definitely been in that situation. Well,
I mean, I
I'm
don't
gonna
care.
go ahead and
That's
cut off the live stream here in a minute. I won't hang up with you. I'll stay on the phone, but give me just a minute.
okay.
So, everybody, tune in next Thursday to Burbia Podcast with John Meat Sheet
If you
Fanzine, and Selecta J Cut.
if you tune in, I might have some tricks up my sleeve. Who knows what I might do? I,
See,
I'll give you a hint. It won't be anything like Gigi Allen. I'll give you a hint.
we wouldn't be able to
Uh,
be on YouTube with that. All right, we're out.